Good afternoon. It's Mayor Jeff Schielke on Friday, September the 4th, 2020, and I'm here with my weekly report. The pandemic and the corona experience that we are experiencing not only in Batavia but throughout the world and specifically in the United States of America really is, I think, kind of changed the direction and the habits of many Americans. All the traditional things that we all like to do, the weekend parties and the get-togethers are now somewhat restricted. Many people don't want to go because of social distancing issues or mask issues. So we've seen almost a complete stop of all the traditional things in Batavia, Memorial Day service and the Viking herring breakfast at Memorial Day, 4th of July, and this weekend on the Labor Day weekend. All that was canceled. The Windmill City Days was canceled. The Party in the Park was canceled by Batavia Main Street. So we're having kind of a year with kind of a non-event year, I guess I would describe it. And as a result, I think what I see happening is a lot of people are using the moment to start to clean out their garages or their houses. I see big lines at the Goodwill store of people who have found stuff that they want to get rid of and are taking it over there. I also see now in the mornings we have great numbers of groups that gather on the Batavia Riverwalk and bring a lawn chair or take up seats at the Peg Bond Center or wherever they can find it and just sit together and express friendship and old stories and visions and ideas. And that's great. I think it speaks to the American spirit that is so strong in Batavia and the hometown kind of isms that exist here, where Batavia really knows itself and knows what it's like and what's bad and what's good. Yesterday I had a wonderful experience talking to an old friend. I think it was for an hour and 26 minutes. And that was just full of kindness and compassion and good thoughts and encouragement. And, I just think that there's a lot of people out there who have hearts of gold and are there to do what they can to help one another. And that's the beauty of Batavia at this troubling moment when we are faced with this corona thing. I do want to begin the actual presentation today on, I'll call it a sad note. And that is that I'd like to take just a couple of minutes and pay tribute to a fellow mayor of mine who passed away this past week. And his name was Jim Willie. And Jim was, as many of you know, was a born and raised Batavian. He was the son of Elwood and Dorothy Willie, and he lived in the 100 block, was born and raised and lived in the 100 block of South Lincoln Street. And he went to Batavia High School, but probably during his high school years, and as for his brother and his sister, the Willie kids had something in Batavia High School that few others didn't, other than perhaps David Peoples, who was in the Batavia High School class in 1964. Mr. Willie and Mr. Peoples were the music program of Batavia High School. And the two of them combined really brought that program in the 1950s and the 1960s to a grand moment. And so we were very, very blessed in Batavia to have these two people in our community, and all the hundreds and maybe thousands of students that they touched over their careers and did great things and taught them great understandings of music is a benefit to now that we today see in the Batavia Community Band, where many of the people who are there are former students of Elwood Willie and Paul Peoples. So Jim Willie passed away last week. He had been the 3-term mayor of Elburn. He was a dentist by profession. He left Batavia, went to college, and returned and opened up a dental practice out in Elburn, and was very successful at that. But he also had kind of a local interest, and he got himself into the political world. And first he was on the Elburn Village Board, and then got himself elected 3 terms as mayor, and then he voluntarily retired because he wanted to get into the political side of the world of dentistry, and he went to Chicago and worked for the State Dental Association in providing political advice and lobbying and all the things that stuff does. But I just wanted to share that Jim had some pretty significant impacts on the Batavia community during his time as mayor of Elburn. I've served as chairman of the Kane County Council of Mayors since 1985, and so he and I worked together. And one project that he was very, very active and involved in, and I'll give him a lot of the credit for its completion, was the extension of the Metro train line from Geneva out to first Mill Creek and then a stop at Elburn, or where it ends. And he was very instrumental in having the discussions with Metro. There were several times when I went into the RTA headquarters in Jackson and met with Metro and the RTA about the whole extending the line from Geneva west, because we were experiencing a lot of backups of parking up in Geneva, where many people were wanting to ride the train to Chicago and they weren't available. And Jim could see that a lot of those people were coming to Geneva from his community. And so it was just another quick ride out to the Fox, to the Mill Creek area to pick up people, and then another couple minutes west to Elburn at their stop. And then at the end of the day, Metro built a big rail storage yard for their overnight trains in Elburn, because then they could start them right there in the morning and be right on the track all the way to Ogilvie Station in downtown Chicago. And Jim Willie deserves a lot of credit for that, for kind of pushing the idea and making some things happening. There's a lot of discussions in Elburn about exactly where that waiting station for those trains and where this train station in Elburn should be. Some people wanted it out further west of town, and Jim didn't think that was a good idea because that was just going to cause more traffic stops and backups on Main Street or Route 47 in downtown Elburn, and he was successful in winning the RTA over, and they put the station where it is now. And so Jim Willie deserves all that credit. He also got started the conversation of building a bridge over the railroad right away in Elburn, and what became known as the Anderson Road Project. And Jim did not finish that one. He left office before that was done, but he had the initial participation in getting that idea rolling. And so he gets a lot of credit for doing some really good things out in this area, and I just wanted to pay tribute to Jim and acknowledge the impacts of progress that he had on our area, and may he rest in peace, because his life certainly was a very strong contributing factor to the world that we live in. Today, as always, when I go through this, I want to just take a couple minutes and give an update specifically involving the work of the Batavia Police Department. And unfortunately, it has not been a good week for the men and women of the Batavia Police Department. We continue to have a rash of people coming into Batavia over the overnight hours. Looks like it's maybe 3 per car, and some person drives the car and the other 2 jump out in a subdivision, and one walks one side of the street and the other walks the other, and they go up and they try all the doors on all cars that are parked outside to see if there's an open door on a car. If there is, they go in and see what contents they can find in there, and there's been a lot of stuff entered and stolen. We've got a lot of police reports about it. And more recently, we've found that we have some people working the community for bicycles that are left outside. And this past week, we made some arrests of some folks that we found out were wandering around Batavia in the middle of the night, and they had a predetermined places where they would take bicycles that had been procured from somebody's back porch or backyard or some unlocked place. If a bike was left outside. And then another person involved, who was also arrested, would pull up in a pickup truck and would haul these bicycles to an undisclosed spot where apparently they were sold and laundered away into the criminal world. And so we've had a lot of bicycles stolen in Batavia. So again, I just, at the request of the police chief, Dan Ewell, I'm requesting that Batavians continue to be on alert for these activities that are taking place in our town. Most of them are at night, after dark, and many of them seem to happen after midnight. So most of us are asleep when this is going on. But our police, I'm very pleased to report, we did catch some people taking the bicycles. We've got some other leads on some of the car stuff, but it's been a real situation that has not gone away, and I just want to continue to encourage you to do so. Also in this mind, as we continue to have the corona thing not go away, although I'm very pleased with the numbers that Batavia has generated versus the rest of Kane County, because we remain down near the bottom of the list of all the towns with any type of corona impact, and our numbers are very, very significantly less than many of our neighboring communities. But that's to the credit of a lot of people who are expressing a lot of care, and ones that I specifically want to cite are our 5 senior living communities that we have in Batavia. They've done a wondrous job, in my opinion, in stepping forward and making sure that people are social distancing, they're wearing masks, and they're specifically restricting and testing everybody that comes in the door to see, do they have any type of a temperature, have they had any connection with anybody that's been diagnosed with corona. There's a lot of stuff going on to kind of prevent this, and so we are very much involved in it, and so far it's been successful. But part of the key seems to be this mask thing. And I took my mask off. I carry masks with me all the time, and when I'm doing a public speech and I'm not near somebody at a city council meeting or this, I take the mask off, because I am being told by people that when I do speak and I have this mask on, sometimes it's hard for people to hear what I'm saying. So that's the reason I have the mask off. But the masks have been controversial. I don't deny that. We have some citizens that believe that the state of Illinois really has not passed the proper laws and given the governor the emergency powers that he should have. And I probably don't argue with some of that sentiment, but on the same token, the governor's office is encouraging us all to ask people to wear masks. I think there is some moments of criticism that need to be leveled here, specifically at the Illinois General Assembly membership, because I think they have in some degree failed us in this whole mask situation as far as why they will not meet and create some specifically temporary laws that really put this into place. But that's for another day, and I'm not part of that government, but I do have that criticism that I will publicly state that I don't feel the General Assembly is really represented us well at this point in time. Batavia also has another neat thing going. We have these two couples in Batavia. Let's see, Sandra and Howard Miller, and Susan and Tom Sokolowski, Sokolowski. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They have funded the creation of the Mask Up Batavia signs, and they have their email address here on the bottom of the sign, which is maskup4batavia.com. And if you're a Batavia resident and you would like to put one in these in your yard, you're asked to send an email to that address, and they will take steps to try to provide you with a sign for your yard in Batavia. A number of people have them. We passed them out to the city council. This one I took out of my yard for the moment to run down here and do this, but this is again something that Batavia is doing, and something that I think is very, very, very much something that we all should be paying attention to. One of the things that I've been doing in this program in the last few weeks is I've started this history segment, and I will tell you, I've gotten a lot of feedback, very nice feedback from many people about bringing out some of these old pictures and kind of tie them together to some moment that's happening in our community. Of all the things I'm doing here, this one seems to be the most popular, because Griffin Price, who's my city PR person, who is in charge of kind of making sure the city's communicating with our world, has some good talents, and he's able to take my pictures and reproduce them in this program so everybody can see them. And so today, because we're coming on to the Labor Day weekend, and the Labor Day weekend for many, many, many decades in Batavia always meant the last weekend of the year that the Quarry swimming pool was open down on Union Avenue and at Water Street. And of course this year the Batavia Park District wisely made the decision that they weren't going to open the Quarry because of the corona situation, so we don't have a final weekend at the Quarry. But the picture I'd like to show this today is this one of the Quarry swimming pool, and the back of it is labeled 1959. And what's interesting, this is the Quarry, as many of the old timers in Batavia will remember it, with the three-tier diving tower and the slide in the shallow part where the kids were, and the fence that separated the deep water from the shallow water, and the boards out in the middle that you could swim out to and jump up and sunbathe or whatever. And then there's the beach, the sandy beach at the south. And then up above it here is the road that everybody used to drive. They used to joke about that was the only place in Batavia where there was a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit. And what basically the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit was attributed to is that about this time, or a little bit after this time, the bikini got invented. And that was a very high attraction and utilization at the Quarry. And so many people used to drive their cars from other towns into Batavia and would do nothing but make a in and out of the quarry for 2 or 3 hours. And when they got up here above it, they'd slow down to 3 to 5 miles an hour, and they'd just cruise along here so they could see who's down there in a bikini. And that was quite the conversation. And even today, swimming wear has been changing, and it is what it is. But some people look very, very good in swimsuits and swimming pools, and it's not unusual that they'll have pictures taken of them, or maybe they'll take some of themselves and send it to somebody. But this is something that I think many people have a joyful remembrance of. And it's a fun thing, and it doesn't cause really many problems other than some nice memories for people. And certainly I just wanted to pay tribute today to the Quarry swimming pool and what it has meant to Batavia for all these years and all the stuff that's done. The story on the Quarry, quite honestly, is that it was there, and there was this huge deposit of limestone. And in 1871, in October 8th of that year, the city of Chicago burned to the ground. And that was the catalyst to really kick the quarry into business, because they had just in the process of planning to build a railroad line right along the west bank of the river, connecting the northwestern line in Geneva with the Burlington line in Aurora. And all of a sudden they had this opportunity to start mining this quarry, taking the stone right off and just walking it a few feet over to the railroad cars and loading it up. And then either from Geneva or Aurora, Batavia was shipping all this limestone to Chicago to rebuild the city in non-combustible material. And that was the big hue and cry in Chicago in 1872, 73, 74, 75 when they were rebuilding Chicago. And you can go there today and still see many limestone buildings, probably many of which came out of Batavia. And so this was also the time that kicked in the influx of specifically Scandinavian people into Batavia, because the word was put out to specifically Denmark, Norway, and Sweden that there was a big need for heavy moving men to come and work in these quarries in Batavia, Illinois. And not only did we have the one that we know of, but there were several more down on South River Street from about Laurel Street south to about where Funway is today. There was a number of other quarries being mined, and there was a railroad track over there that they could tap into. So Batavia became kind of the quarry generating, the stone generator of the region, along with Lamont and to some lesser degree Elmhurst. And those were the places where the stone was coming to do all the stuff that needed to be done after the Great Chicago Fire. And so Batavia had that history, and it's a proud one, and it's one that many of us have had. If we grew up here, everybody knew what the quarry was. You had personalities like Sam Rotolo, who was down there doing swimming lessons, and I don't know how many thousands of people Sam Rotolo taught to swim at the quarry, but I'm sure during his lifetime he saved a lot of lives by teaching kids how to swim. And then another story about the quarry that I would just comment on is that if you were an East Sider and you wanted to take the shortcut to the quarry, you had to go over what we called the Trestle. And the Trestle was on the railroad spur line that ran down Island Avenue and came down to the Appleton, which is the building where our police department and city hall are. And they used to make windmills in here, and they'd load the windmill kits up here and over at the U.S., which is where Walgreens is now at. And those two plants would feed a lot of windmill kits onto railroad cars, and then they'd ship them back out there alongside the quarry down to the Burlington line. And then that market was immediately to the west in Iowa and Nebraska and Kansas and all those areas, which were then starting to be developed and needing farm. So they needed to have a trestle built from what today is the south end of the quarry almost down to where the island parks are. And so they needed to put a bridge in for the railroad cars, and so they built this bridge over what was then the second channel of the Fox River, which used to run where McDonald's and Walgreens now is, and that had been hand dug in the 1870s to allow for the factories to have water power abilities to run heavy machinery and wheels and whatever. So from that perspective, Batavia had all this going on, and we would move all this equipment on water and on rail. And so if you were a kid and you wanted to get to the quarry, the quick way to get there was come down Wilson Street to Island Avenue and then run down and jump on the railroad tracks and walk across about a, I don't know, 200-foot long bridge that was down there. And they used to have ladders nailed to the side of the bridge. And so if you were out there and a train came along and you got caught in the middle of the trestle, there were a couple of bridges that you and your friends could go hang on to until the train got by. But this picture we have shows a couple of kids out walking the trestle. And again, this is for people who grew up in Batavia 40s, 50s, and 60s. This is a memorable photo because this was, I know many parents just shuddered when they heard their kids were down walking the trestle, but that was a popular term and activity to use in Batavia. So today, I think we are a blessed community. We have so many nice people here, and we have a lot going on, and we're having a lot of time to spend with ourselves and our friends and just get to know each other better. And hopefully one of the blessings of this whole experience will be that it helped to bring together a whole bunch of people who maybe didn't know each other as well as hopefully they're getting to do now. So keep up the efforts at friendship and appreciation and support for one another, and the sentiments that developed and the appreciation for each other, because some of that runs very, very deep, and it brings hearts together and minds together and eyes together and makes everybody understand what is really truly important to ourselves in this world. So I'm going to end that today, and I've got some more stuff to share next week, but I try to keep these around the 20-minute time frame, and I think I'm getting there now. So anyway, thank you for a good day today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And have a great Labor Day weekend.